How do you really break into game design? I've been passionate about video games, especially design, since I was about 8 or so years ago, 23 now. I have spent much time in most of the games you had to roll in. The way I got into design was through customer service and then meeting the designers and then just trying to find a way to make myself useful to them and then learning what they did. These days, with all of the tools that are available, if you're really into design, I think with the tools that are available, with the tutorials that are available on like YouTube and things like that, and the books and everything else that are out there, it should be feasible for you to kind of explore what kind of designer you want to be. Are you somebody that's more narrative driven? Are you systems driven? Are you somebody that's into game balance? Are you somebody that's into mission scripting? That type of stuff, right? So you can work on small prototype games. I would say one place to start is to take some example games. Like if you were to go to Unity and just look at their little project games, you can go in there and start just altering them, make them do different things than what was originally intended. So if you're thinking, hey, I think would like to be a game designer, to me seems like a good starting point. There's just so much information and such good tools out these days. I think it's easier to learn it. It's easier to kind of start to explore it for yourself. I don't know that it's easier to get into the industry. And one of the things that we're seeing is there was just an IGDA report. I should have left it up. Then I could have read out some of the stats. We've seen a tremendous number of layoffs in the last 2 years in the industry. So there's a lot of talent, like experienced talent on the market. And those folks, they do it professionally and they're looking to pay their bills and they're in a tough spot. So I don't want to sound like I'm not empathetic and saying like, hey, while you're looking for a job, maybe try doing a little bit of what we're doing, which is get together with some other folks. If you're a programmer, get together with artists, designer. If you're a designer, look for programmers, artists. And maybe just while you're looking around, while you're trying to find work, if you're not in a situation where you're like, fuck, I'm just trying to like not starve or lose my house. If the situation and time allows, I'd say start working with some folks, jam on some stuff and see if you can put a little something together and stay sharp. And who knows, maybe you will be able to put together something that's a tiny enough little pitch to start up, get a little bit of funding. Try to finish something small, Keith said. Maybe make little games that make your friends laugh. Yeah. I mean, I think before people even make something, I was very fortunate to learn game design in an environment where, because at the time I thought, oh, maybe I'll be an environment artist or whatever, but I was fortunate enough to learn game design in an environment that was live, right? So EverQuest was live. I could learn the tools that the designers were using, and I understood the context. And so it was about making more of that thing. And that's why I kind of encourage, like, if you can find as a super basic project to start with, is don't make anything. Modify something. Now, over time, as you develop your chops and you start to learn more about like understand design fundamentals and things like that, then getting into like 2D sort of paper design of games even before you begin to build them and figure out like your intent before you start. I think that just getting in and modifying a thing to do something different gets you a lot more immediate feedback and it's not overwhelming. Maybe like StarCraft editor or something. Yeah, like basically any editor. But again, these simple projects, I don't know, do they still exist? Unity had these cool little projects that you could download, go sort of line by line and get them set up. And they weren't hard. Like, I'm not a technical person, but I was able to get in and mess around with the C# that they had there. The reason why I recommend that is one of the biggest challenges that I've seen with new designers is new designers overcomplicate everything, bite off more than they can chew, like 90% of the time, have huge ambitions, and then overwhelm themselves and vapor lock. Class and Cool says, my son's super into game design. He's on Blockbench now, but wants to try Godot 4 next. I'm learning a lot in the process. Oh, that's awesome. Man, kids are so creative and they pick stuff up so fast. It's insane. It may not be the case for you, so apologies if it's not a good recommendation. But I think the recommendation of like starting with something and tweaking it and then learning about like, oh, if I tweak this, that causes that to happen. Oh, I broke it. I can untweak it, but I still have a functioning thing. Making something from scratch is pretty difficult. But going in and tweaking and like, oh, I'm going to change the way I look. We actually got a feature at Star Stable because the young girls that played our game, for those of you who don't know, my last company that I worked at was Star Stable Entertainment, and it makes an online horse adventure game for girls. It's a MMO. It's actually pretty old school MMO. It's, you know, interesting lore and all that stuff. One of the things that the girls were doing was they figured out where to go in the directory structure of the game to delete like the player asset or whatever. They figured out how to make their character no longer render, or make characters no longer render on the game, so that they could run around as horses. Rather than riding the horses, they just wanted to be horses. And they would get together and they'd run around as wild horses. And some of the girls would like petition and tell on them, or like be on Instagram, you know, Susie is hacking the game. She keeps hacking the game and posting videos about it. You need to ban her. The thing that we noticed was they just wanted to be horses. So we put in the ability for them to basically just toggle it. I'm a little further ahead than that, but I might want to check back in and do more things. Changing video game systems is what made me fall in love with it. Eventually led me to sharing it with friends. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you're basically beyond that point, then I'd say you're probably in decent shape to kind of branch out and see. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a generalist. Just at bigger teams, there tends to be a higher degree of specialization. I'll say that the more technical you are while still being someone that's got a good feel for gameplay and the experience and narrative and stuff, the more valuable you'll be. I encourage game designers to be as technical as they can possibly be. You know, if their passion lies in storytelling or whatever, great, but it never hurts to be relatively technical.